I used to think of my ranch as paradise on earth. Every morning I'd wake up to roosters crowing and cattle lowing in the distance. My wife, Jenny, and I had built our dream home out here, 21 acres of oak trees, rolling meadows, and a barn full of horses. The sunrises painted the sky in gold and pink over our little, Sunset Ridge ranch, and life was blissful. I should mention, I helped write the rules for this community years ago. Back in the early days, when our neighborhood was just dirt roads and empty plots, I volunteered to help the developer draft the Homeowners Association, HOA, bylaws. Over endless nights, I pored over clause after clause in a dusty office, handwriting sections of the covenants and restrictions. Nobody could have guessed that years later, I'd be the one to use those same bylaws to fight back. For years, the HOA on Sunset Ridge was run fairly. We had a small, peaceful neighborhood of ranch-style homes and hobby farms, with neighbors who respected one another. I trusted everyone on the board, and we kept homes looking neat and orderly. There was a sense of respect that I cherished. Whenever a newbie moved in, we'd welcome them with a pie or a barbecue. Everyone pitched in to keep our roads clean and our community events going. Life was good, until Karen moved in next door. Karen Parker was the sort who believed authority came with an attitude. She had a fancy new house with bright white pillars and a red door that she replaced every month. She strutted around like she owned the whole valley. She soon got herself appointed to the HOA board. Within months, she declared herself the new HOA president, anointed by a few nods at a meeting, and no real experience at the job. It wasn't long before things started to change. It was a Tuesday when I first heard from Karen. I was leaning against my fence fixing a broken rail, humming along to some old country tune on the radio, when she stomped out of her house and marched up. I greeted her politely. She pretended not to hear me. "Mr. Thompson," she snapped. I never liked how she used Mr. Thompson, last names made everything sound so formal and confrontational. "I'm here to address a very serious violation of HOA Code 9.2.1. I frowned. Violation? Of what? "Your barn roof," she declared, hands on hips. "It's forest green metal. The covenants specify it must be a terracotta tile roof to match community standards." She was pointing at the old green metal roof that had been perfectly fine for over a decade. My stomach dropped. "Wait, green metal was fine when we built this," I protested. I glanced at my neighbors' houses. Nobody had terracotta tile barns, nor were they all green roofs. "Jen, we discussed it, we even got approval back then. The developer signed off." Karen drew herself up. "Those were different standards then. Times change, Mr. Thompson. Now we enforce uniform aesthetics. And your roof? It's a violation. I'm afraid the board has to take action." She gave me a tight smile. "Please fix it before I have the horses taken off your property." I blinked at her. The horses? What on earth? The barn roof was hardly a public emergency. This was petty, and ruthless. "Karen," I tried calmly, "my horses have lived in that barn for years. It's not fair to threaten to take them. We've followed the rules." She didn't care for my protests. Rules or not, the boards voted on this. Fix the roof in 30 days or face eviction. That's HOA Code 12.4, continued violation permits eviction. She folded her arms. "I'm sure you can afford it, Mr. Thompson. I'd like to see this resolved quickly." I swallowed hard. Eviction from my own home? Over a roof? Please, consider this. I helped write those rules, I know what they say. Karen's eyes flashed. "You wrote rules, yes. But I enforce them. As president, I have authority. Don't lecture me." She turned and walked away, leaving me stunned in the driveway. My hands trembled. Evicted. The word echoed. I felt a knot form in my chest. "Don't lecture me," she had said, as if I were a child breaking the law. I watched her stomp back into her house. I couldn't believe what she said next. She threatened to take my horses. To evict me. It was absurd. And it terrified me. Over the next few days, Karen did not back down. Instead, she showed up with fancy letters stamped with HOA board at the top. I found them on our front porch and the mailbox, each day with a new demand: the roof, trimming my oak tree. She claimed it cast shadows on her garden, painting my barn shutters a dull beige instead of red, and even moving our horseshoes pit a few feet to the left. Every request was more unreasonable than the last. I tried everything I could to reason with Karen. I invited her over for coffee, but she refused. I offered to re-roof the barn if she'd sign off, but she insisted it had to be clay tiles and a year's worth of HOA fines in advance. She sneered any time I mentioned her own home. "We're just addressing violations, nothing personal," she'd say in that tight, official voice. It felt personal. Worse, I realized she intended to fine me out of my house. One morning, she cornered me by the mailbox. "Your deadline is in 3 days. By Friday, either the roof is redone in clay tiles or we start eviction proceedings. I won't waste more time on excuses." She tapped the stack of letters in her hand. I swallowed. "What about you, Karen? You're ignoring rules too. Remember the sign you posted in the yard? That's explicitly banned." "I heard enough, Mr. Thompson," she hissed. "Your time is up. Good day." I stood there watching her walk away and started shaking. The injustice burned inside me. I had shared this neighborhood's dreams, helped write the bylaws that everyone promised to follow. And now this upstart was going to throw me out based on her whims. I was furious but pinned beneath fear of losing our home, my livelihood. That night, I tossed and turned. Jenny asked what was wrong. I told her everything, how Karen had become the tyrant HOA president, belittling us, threatening our eviction. Her eyes widened. "We can't lose Sunset Ridge," she said firmly. "You know those rules, honey. Fight back. Please." Yes, I'd fight back. Just had to figure out how. I went to my office and pulled out an old binder. It was the thick stack of original HOA covenants and amendments that had sat forgotten on a shelf since we moved in. Dust-coated and brittle at the edges, but it was ours. The cover had my handwriting on the front: Sunset Ridge Homeowners Covenants, 1998, revised 2018. That night, under the kitchen light, I reread every single rule. I flipped to section 12.4, eviction is permissible only if an owner's structure poses immediate hazard and he or she repeatedly refuses official notices. My eyebrows shot up. Hazard? Our barn roof, while not terracotta, was in excellent condition, no hazard at all. I'd installed it myself to withstand hailstorms. Something was off. According to our own rulebook, an eviction for a roof color was ludicrous. The way the clause was written, eviction was a nuclear option only if property was dangerous or owners blatantly refused compliance after multiple warnings. I'd never been officially warned, just harangued by Karen herself. This looked like abuse of power. Then I turned some pages and gasped. In the section titled Architectural Standards, I saw my own signature at the bottom of the page. It listed acceptable roof materials, and indeed it said metal roofs were allowed. The color could be anything, earth tone, complementary to natural surroundings. Green fit that description better than a red clay tile would have, where our pine trees and golden fields dominated the landscape. In fact, tile roofs were never mandatory. The developer had just changed his mind after I was off the board, trying to copy some suburban style, but it was never ratified properly. And in the amendments section, under Property Extensions, I saw something surprising, a small paragraph about accessory buildings, barns, sheds. I scrolled and found it: accessory buildings must not exceed 500 square feet and must appear subordinate to main residence. My barn was 400 square feet and clearly behind the house, hardly dominating. But it mentioned nothing about roof color at all, meaning that initial claim Karen made had no basis. I realized in that moment, I literally helped write these documents, word for word. My name was on a bunch of these pages, not as a glorified signing, but as an actual author of the language. No wonder it was feeling like someone had blind spots, I could find the loopholes. Then my eyes fell on one more thing, a note scrawled in the margin by my hand in 1999 about Karen herself. The developer's family friend, her father, was on the board then, and she had been a kid playing in the garden. The note said, "Future President." I chuckled softly, I had jokingly predicted it. Even then, I suspected she had too much fire to stay quiet in a meeting. All at once I understood, Karen was playing fast and loose with the rules. She had rewritten small clauses informally, maybe verbally decided on things without officially updating the covenants. She assumed no one would know. But I did know. I had it all memorized. I looked up, resolve settling in like dawn breaking through dark clouds. That's when I knew I had to fight back. No more silencing or hiding. We had followed the books, she would find out just how exacting I could be with them. Jenny knocked gently and whispered, "Had a breakthrough?" I nodded and showed her the key parts. She understood immediately. "She's in trouble," she smiled grimly. "Let's bring this to the board." The next HOA board meeting was scheduled for Saturday afternoon. I could feel my heart thumping in my chest as I walked into the community hall, which was more like a big barn event room. A banner at the door said Sunset Ridge Monthly HOA Meeting. People trickled in, murmuring. When Karen saw me, her smile froze. She had that air of superiority peeled away, revealing a flicker of something, maybe fear. Not sure. Mr. Ramsey, the secretary, called the meeting to order. Karen wasted no time. "We have a serious matter," she announced. She clicked a laser pointer and lit up a PowerPoint slide with bullet points, suspicious barn roof color, and repeated non-compliance. She swept a glance over everyone. "Mr. Thompson has ignored multiple warnings. We must act." I raised my hand. "May I respond, Madam President?" She scowled but nodded curtly. I walked to the podium feeling every eye on me. This was it. "Members of the board, neighbors, I was shocked and hurt by the claims made tonight," I began. "And I think it's time we looked at the actual documents governing us. The very covenant that's been cited as my violation was written by me, decades ago. Let's look at what it says." On my laptop, I flipped through scanned pages on the screen. I highlighted the relevant line, "Acceptable roofing materials include metal, color to be complementary to environment." I turned to face everyone. Green is complementary to the meadows and oaks around me. This roof was in full compliance when it went up, indeed, that clause was approved by this board with my signature on it. I kept my voice calm but clear. Furthermore, Karen cited HOA Code 12.4 on eviction. That clause requires multiple official warnings and an actual hazard. I have not received a single official warning from the board. All I got were these letters after threats from you, Karen. My property poses zero hazard, as testified by the city inspector last year. I flashed an email I had printed and handed to the secretary. Murmurs ran through the room. Some neighbors nodded, even Mr. Ramsey looked surprised. Karen's face lost color. She sputtered, but, the board decided these changes. I held up the amendment section. The board can only decide things that follow the covenant process. Changing a covenant requires a vote of all members or a board-enacted amendment. No such amendment exists for roof colors. And even if it did, that amendment itself would have to comply with state HOA law, which mandates transparency. I've checked, no notice was given to homeowners about any such change. We cannot arbitrarily ignore our own bylaws. Also, I continued, raising my other point, there's another violation the HOA, has ignored. About that secret garage/storage shed behind your home, you never submitted that for approval as an accessory building, and it exceeds the square footage limit. The room gasped. I pointed to a photo on another slide showing her shed poking out behind a row of hedges. By our books, your structure violates Article 5.2. When I checked our covenants, the enforcement of that section is mandatory. Yet you've never bothered to mention it, much less address it. Karen's jaw dropped. She tried to interject, I had permission. I shook my head gently. No record. Since I literally helped draft those lines, I know nobody granted permission, not by the letter of our law. A simple oversight, I'm sure, but it's there. Members of the board, please remember our duty is to uphold these rules fairly. I am not above the law, and neither is she. I turned to the board president. The proper process now is to recognize that Karen's claims against me have no legal basis. Not only that, but she herself is in violation. I move to rescind any eviction action. The room was quiet. A tense pause. Mrs. Ramirez, a fellow board member who was once friendly with Karen, cleared her throat. Are you saying? Yes, I said softly. We must honor our covenants. Or else we face lawsuits ourselves. Karen finally snapped. Her eyes narrowed on me. You think you can just sit there and lecture me? I raised an eyebrow. Not lecture. Clarify. I believe in our community, Mrs. Parker. I also believe in accountability. She stood abruptly. You wrote the rules, but I enforced them. I should never have to answer to the likes of you. A voice from the back murmured, maybe it's time she does. Heads nodded, I saw understanding in neighbors' eyes. President Ramirez banged her gavel. Please, this is out of order. She said firmly to Karen, we will need to review the shed situation, yes. For now, the eviction notice will be withdrawn, pending proper review by the board. Mr. Thompson, thank you for the clarification. Karen looked like she had swallowed a bug. She muttered something under her breath about, next time, just watch the paperwork, but her voice was limp. I couldn't hold it back any longer. The adrenaline let loose and I whispered under my breath, that's when I knew I had to fight back, and I was ready. Inside, though, relief and triumph swelled. I had faced the dragon with the sword of truth, and it cut deep. By the end of the day, everything had flipped. The HOA rescinded the fines against me, and with good reason. Karen's eviction threat was nullified. In fact, a majority of the board quietly voted to file a violation against Karen for the unapproved structure and her attempts to circumvent the rules. The irony was sweet, the bully who tried to throw me out was now facing scrutiny by the very community she was supposed to protect. I returned to my ranch as the sun dipped low. My house stood intact. My barn with its green roof was still there, and no tractor came to seize my horses. I whistled at a horse grazing nearby and scratched its mane. See? I told it. We made it through. That evening, I walked around the property picking up stray horse shoes and watering the garden under the last light. I felt a deep calm. The neighbors began to greet me differently now, with proud smiles. Mr. Jenkins, who worked construction, clapped me on the back. Heard the news. You knocked down, partner. Even Karen's father, Mr. Parker, shook my hand quietly and said, well done. Deep down, I knew I hadn't wanted a fight, I just wanted fairness. But if standing up was the only way to protect my home, then fight I did. It felt almost poetic how the rules I helped create ended up protecting me. And it dawned on me that the same tools Karen tried to use for power were now keeping her honest. Always know the rules, and never be afraid to enforce them. In a world of crooked decisions and entitled attitudes, sometimes the pen is mightier than a bully's bark. I discovered that standing up for what's right, armed with knowledge and calm resolve, can be the most powerful revenge of all. When people threaten injustice, remember that truth is on your side. Treat others fairly, stay true to your own words, and karma will eventually make things even. Each of us has a responsibility to uphold community and respect one another. When that balance is lost, a little tenacity and a lot of faith in justice can set it right again.